Hello, I'm Jamie Ruby, and welcome to Sci-Fivision Presents Fandom Access for December 11th with my co-hosts Karen Mole and AJ Grillo. We have special guests coming in a few minutes. They're running a little late, so we'll give them a couple minutes. But we're going to have John Griffin, Jeff Pinkner, and Jack Bender on tonight. I'm sure if you're here, you know that. But they'll be coming on, and we'll try to get through everybody's questions. I know they have an hour, so we will see how it goes. But thank you, everybody, for coming. And for all your great questions. I know some people already sent me some, and we'll get to it as soon as they get here. And thank you, Tehran. I'll make sure I ask your question.
But yeah, feel free to everybody pop them in the chat. And Jamie and I wanted to remind all of you guys that the chat is visible to our guests. So we appreciate everyone always being so polite and respectful to our guests while they're here.
Yeah. And while you're waiting, make sure you take time to like and subscribe this stream. And you can see all our old live streams under the live tab, or the other video interviews under the video tab on YouTube. But hello, everyone. Apologize for the wait. They should be here in a couple minutes. I've already heard back from the manager, so he's giving me. Whoop, okay.
Whoop. Is that your phone?
What was that?
Is that Jamie's ring? If that's Jamie's ringtone, is Big Bang Theory. I didn't know. I've known Jamie forever. I never knew that about her. I'm going to put mine on silent now also. Those guys, our guests, they're out in LA where it's the middle of the workday still, right? So maybe they're having trouble shaking loose.
Sorry about that. Yeah, they are running 5 minutes late. That was just their people letting me know. So I'm like, just let them know. They'll be live when they come on.
Okay.
Yes, they are on their way. So let's just give them a couple minutes. And yes, thank you. I'm glad you like my ringtone. So at first I'm like, oh no, I hope he didn't give him the phone number by mistake.
Oh, my lamp is. I'm having trouble with my lamp here, you guys.
Yeah. But there we go. We'll get started. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, I will just mention Saturday night, we're having another rewatch watch party for the second episode of the first season of From at the Discord that the link is in the chat for, and followed by Sunday night at 10:30, of course, Eastern. It's always Eastern. Is my live stream with Julie B Deep Dives. Sorry, where we'll be breaking down that episode, and hopefully you all come. Hopefully Karen will maybe be able to join a little bit. I need to turn this down. Okay.
Here we
There
go.
we go. Let me I'm going to bring in John here. Whoop. Now, Karen, you got to do your job dragon here. Okay. Adding you to the stage. Hold on. We're getting the screen here. Do this one. There we go. Let's do that. And then when he comes,
we get one more.
Friends,
yeah, we got one more coming. Sorry about that.
Mr. Pinkner will be joining us momentarily.
All right. Well, hi, guys. Thank you.
Hi, I'm on.
Is that coming from? Okay. I thought that was for me at first.
Thanks. Bye. Hi, guys.
How are we doing?
Thanks
so much
for coming. Yeah, appreciate it. I'm Jamie. This is Karen and AJ, and we appreciate you coming, giving us your time. We've been looking forward to this, and we've got lots of questions already. I guess we could just get started, and then whenever Jeff gets here, we can get him to jump in.
Sure.
So my first question was, can you talk about, have you started the fourth season? I mean, are you currently working on it, or have you not started production yet?
We are currently marinating on the fourth season. So yeah, nothing official has gotten underway yet.
Okay, so you haven't written anything. That's kind of what I figured, but there's so many things leaking online. It's kind of like you wonder. So
somebody mentioned to me, they were like, "Hey, the all 10 episodes for season 4 leaked online." I was like, "Really? Wow, that's remarkable."
That's not possible.
Hey, John. Listen, I read all those 10 episodes, and I think I've got a few notes. Otherwise, they're great.
Yeah. Oh, good. Great. Work is done then. Job's done. We're all ready to go.
Yeah, all ready to shoot.
Hold on one second, guys. I'm getting I don't know how to put myself on mute.
There's a little microphone button at the
Oh, there.
There you go. He's muted. Maybe they leaked from the multiverse of madness, or an alternate, the alternate universe
like that.
Sent them through Fromville to us.
That's possible.
John's temporarily out of screen. I think Jack, can we just go to you? You've directed, I think, maybe like half the episodes of the show.
Well, I'm also an exec producer and partner in the shows with the guys creatively.
Yep, you are.
And I, in fact, it's a wonderful partnership and collaboration. It's great working with these guys. And Jeff and I go back to Lost. I had the pleasure of meeting John on this when they asked me to the party, and I thankfully said yes. And I've directed, the majority of the episodes.
I was going to say, it's funny you say that. The three of us met each other way back when because of a Lost chat. And that's how we started.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so we'd ask a specifically directorial question to you. Talk about directing the very opening, the opening attack, I should say. It's not the very opening, but the opening attack on Megan and her mother, because that's such an iconic scene. Can you talk a bit about that?
You mean the opening of
season one?
Pilot.
Yes.
Well, John and Jeff and I talked a lot about how gruesome we were going to make this show. They're asking me about the original attack with Megan and her mother.
Oh, okay.
And I'm talking about that. We talked a lot about how gruesome to make the show. And I remember having a discussion with you guys and talking about the movie Seven, which we all agree is brilliant. And what Seven, there's Jeff.
Hello, Mr. Pinkner.
Welcome. Thank you.
Jeff, I'm not blabbing first. I was asked a question, so I will just let you know, because Jeff knows I can talk.
How long do we have? Just take the whole time, please. I'll be thrilled.
No. So what I was saying, they were asking about Megan, the first kill in the show, and I was talking about how the three of us talked a lot about how gruesome to make it. John had written this brilliant idea that they walk slowly and they smile. Now, I had seen all the brilliant films where they had monsters attacking, viral monsters attacking and eating and grabbing and gory and all that stuff. And I was so surprised by that idea and thought it was so unique. And we talked about the seductive way the grandmother would make the girl think she's her grandmother and then open the door, and that dramatically, poetically, and in every way, when a character who's locked safely inside because of the talismans opens a door, opens a window, at some point conceivably opens their brain, whatever, their heart, whatever. But in this case, it was opening the window, the monster attacks. Now, going back to Seven, and then I'll let you guys carry on. I talked about how we didn't see the killings. We saw the aftermath of the killings in Seven and how gruesome that was. And that I said, in our conversation, we came up with the idea, let's show the gruesomeness and everything after the fact, and the shock of the attack and the seduction that leads to the attack up front, first, and then we'll come back and see what those monsters did, which will be horrific, and let the audience imagine what's happening off camera. So that's how that first attack and became sort of the modus operandi for certainly season one.
And I think too, like a lot of what you see in the in that first episode really kind of set the tone for how we, how we write the show, how Jack sort of like composes the show visually. The idea that if there is going to be gore, it's going to be linked to an emotional response. Like we're going to experience it emotionally. And that sort of like presents itself in the first episode of season 3, where, and it's no longer a spoiler because the season's aired and been out there. So, and anybody watching, I'm assuming, has seen it, but you don't see the gruesome nature of Tien Shen's death when she's experiencing it. The only time we see it is when Boyd is experiencing it emotionally. So we're experiencing that gruesome act as an emotional experience with Boyd. And, another thing that I love that Jack did that really set the tone for the show was creating the negative space in the frame. I remember I forget if you said it when we were in pre-production, Jack, or just mentioning it when we were on set, but like the idea of everything, nothing being filmed center frame, which I just, and I've had people say to me, hey, is that intentional? Because I'm always wondering what's going to pop up in that empty space. And I was like, that is exactly how Jack Bender described it. So, I think there's a lot of things in that first episode where that really sort of like set the tone for, both how we were going to tell the story and how we were going to compose the story visually.
All right. Do you have anything to add, Jeff, before I move on?
They both said it beautifully.
Okay, I just don't want to cut you off. All right, we have a question from Turan, which again, thank you so much, appreciated. He says, what does the writer's room look like? Is it covered in maps, charts, and notes? Something as intricate and chaotic as Reddit's theory boards? I don't know if anything can be quite that chaotic, but
I'll make this very simple. As a consequence of the pandemic and these 3 seasons, our writer's room has been virtual. We're all little boxes on a Zoom, and it's all sadly in our heads. We don't have message boards. We don't have charts. We may all privately have our notes that we're scribbling constantly, but we're not surrounded by a wall of crazy.
well, it's in your head still.
And on the rare occasion that we actually do get to meet in person, it's always weird to see people outside of their little boxes that they live in and realize that we all have legs and are of varying heights.
John's much taller than he appears on Zoom.
Well, that's like during COVID when people would take off their mask when it was over and you went, whoa. And I never realized, except for those police books, which I never studied, but, have a third of a face and you put together the composite. I would always think from the nose up was the most telling, but it's amazing how people's jaw and mouth changes their face.
The other thing, which is just psychologically weird, is it takes a minute when you're in person to like orient your brain. As disorienting as working on Zoom is, and it's really disorienting, the moment when you're in a room with people who you've interacted with for a long time daily on Zoom, and you're suddenly in a room, there's a certain cognitive dissonance. There's almost like a discomfort of like looking at people. It takes a second. It really takes a second.
And it's also the fact that like being on Zoom, no one else has to be subjected to my fucking awful handwriting, as opposed to like the one time we were in the room and I started writing on the board. I was like, man, I am really bad at this.
I thought you were going to say something a little bit more off color,
me too.
but
No, just the handwriting.
You're terrible, ... Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. There's a plethora of things you can choose from. I went for handwriting.
All right, Karen.
I wanted to ask, how has that transition been? I mean, you guys kind of came up in an era of big writers' rooms, a number of writers and that kind of atmosphere Taryn described. The industry's trending away from that, but does working at home and having some independent time help you with the story?
I'm going to attack this a couple different ways. John has never been. This is John's experience.
This is my maiden voyage.
Having come
Grand Slam.
I was going to say, great maiden voyage.
Having come from larger writers' rooms, it's a few things. One, the size of our room is significantly smaller, which has pros and cons. There's less brains. It's more focused. There's in a bigger room, you always try to be attentive to making sure everybody's had an opportunity and that it's not competitive or that people aren't. Frequently, I would find that the people who speak the least, when they do speak, have the best ideas. They're just saving them. Or in the I lost my train of thought. The
Smaller rooms.
In the smaller rooms, what's weird about being on Zoom is there absolutely is a more focused period of time that you work. Even if you're working all day somehow and you take 10-minute breaks to go to the bathroom or whatever it is every hour, you're more focused. You just are. There's less gossiping. There's less chit chat. Even sometimes that's like necessary for the creative process of just like talking about other stuff for a few minutes and then coming back to it. But what you miss out on is frequently it's the little conversation on the way down the hall to get a snack where you like, oh, I have an idea. It's like sometimes you need to step away from it, and there's less of that on Zoom because you don't step away in the same way. So
that happens
it's
during
just
our
different
pee breaks in this room. It's like we'll take 5 minutes to pee and everybody will come back and be like, hey, I had a great idea. So yeah.
Well, but also when you're on a Zoom and you're alone, you'd be talking to yourself. So it's a different experience going to pee.
That's right. Yes.
Speaking of
But
pee,
it's in college. It's just different, and it's impossible to say whether it's better or worse. Thankfully, I think we felt that we had been really successful, and I don't think we would in any way be making a better show if we were all in a room together. But it's different.
Thanks.
EJ?
So first and foremost, let me just say thank you, gentlemen, for this amazing show. The three of us came from a world where Lost was a big deal. That's how the three of us met, was watching Lost and talking about it every week, and that's how our podcast started. So some of you guys, two of you guys had worked on Lost. My question is, what is the biggest difference from working on something like Lost and From than something more straightforward?
Before I let these two guys answer that, I'm going to jump in really quick because I actually have like a story that I like to tell about Lost and getting the opportunity to work. I'm assuming they're on both sides of me because they are on my screen, which is why
They are.
getting the opportunity to work with these two guys as well as Harold Perrineau. We went to Comic-Con for the first time this year. If anybody watching has already heard the story, I apologize. Bear with me. We went to Comic-Con for the first time this year. It was almost 20 years to the day after Lost premiered at Comic-Con. And when Lost premiered at Comic-Con, I happened to be in Hall H. I had just watched a panel and I looked in the brochure and I saw that, oh, there's a J.J. Abrams show coming up. I'll stick around for that. And it happened to be Lost. Jack, I think you were on the panel, if I'm not mistaken. I know Harold was, but I can't remember if you were as well.
I was there once or twice, but I can't remember if I was for that first one, but whatever.
But
Carry
just
on.
having the opportunity almost 20 years to the day later to sit on stage with Harold, with Jeff. Jack was not there because he was off being brilliant on another show, is just, you know, for anybody out there watching that, and I don't mean to sound corny, but like if you have a dream, chase it and follow it, because like it and don't give up, because like having that moment with those guys at Comic-Con was truly magical and sort of like a bookend to a very long journey, but one that I was very blessed to be able to take, and to be able to work with these guys is just, it's a dream come true. Now I'll shut up and you can talk about, I forgot what your question was, but I'm gonna shut up now.
I had asked what's the biggest difference working on a show like Lost or From as opposed to something more straightforward?
Jack?
Well, you know, straightforward is tricky because, you know, in life, I barely put one foot in front of the other. And I think that whether the one thing I will say about both of these shows, and we talked about this too, when I was first invited to join you guys. And I said, we've got to make this in the human sphere believable, because the idea is crazy ass. We know that. And how these people are here, we don't know why. But they are people who are struggling to both get out, survive, and live this terrible experience the best they can. And that was also true of Lost. So I will say that both of those shows, as long as the core of the show are people you can relate to, whatever the obstacle course that surrounds them. And obviously, Hawaii and the North Shore was a lot more beautiful. Not that I'm taking anything away from Halifax. I love Halifax. God knows I'm there enough.
Come on, Jack. You love those late night snowshoots.
Yeah, I loved it. We won't get into that one, the cows. But I will say that what I'm saying is that even though being on the island was beautiful and all of that stuff, the fact is that if if you're dealing with the human struggle, that to me is the core of any great drama. And Lost had that. And I guess if you were doing something, I mean, define something out of the box, because I usually, thankfully, end up dealing with things, even if they're out of the box, they are in the human box. And that to me is always the key. And I don't know that I've ever done anything that is so out there that my anchor isn't the human characters and the struggle in this crazy ass world, which you have to create authentically and creatively. Does that answer your question? So I kind of answered it by saying, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, I kind of think it's always got to be about that first and foremost to me. And even Stephen King, who we've all had the pleasure of working on his projects, and he's a genius. And the when he's writing about the monster inside the people, it's always more exciting than when he's writing about cars, to me, turning into monsters. So I'll go back to what I said. It's about the people. And John created out of his head this extraordinary, and developed it with Jeff, this extraordinary universe that is challenging, scary, and unique.
Well, and I think one of the things that, just piggybacking a little bit on what Jack said, I think one of the things that's been important to all of us from the very beginning is that, like, in as much as we can, with, this outlandish premise, in as much as we can, see it through the lens of what if this really happened, and which is why, as storytellers, we try to approach even the characters like flawed heroes. I think it's what makes Boyd such a perfect maypole for the show, and all the way down through the cast, is that these are characters that, as Jeff said, when we first started working together, he's like, look, these characters don't know they're in a TV show. They don't know that there's a puzzle they're supposed to be solving. All they know is that they're living through a nightmare, which was really sort of like the guiding purpose. And so they're not always making the best decisions. They are in over their heads. Like, I think the most attractive heroes to me have always been heroes like Indiana Jones, who may not have all the answers, but they're doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. And sometimes they don't always make the right decision, but they make the best decision they can at the time. And those kinds of flaws, I think, are and those little cracks and those little rough around the edges qualities, hopefully, help add to that sort of like visceral reality that we're trying to establish.
I don't know what a straightforward show is. I think that we try to tell really, really, really grounded stories in heightened circumstances. And that's what appeals to me. And as John just said, if you're trying to approach it from what are the characters thinking, what are the questions they're asking, and you really try to stay inside of the story and not look at it from the outside, then, as Jack said, you're really dipping into what would I do in this circumstance? What's the human condition? What's human about this? And all of these are, all of the shows that I find the most appealing are in some way metaphors for what we all go through all the time. Our show deals with grief a lot. Unfortunately, being human, we're all going to grieve. And when you put that against a really heightened backdrop, it somehow it makes it more palatable. I guess.
Go ahead, Jack.
Well, I was just going to say, we all have trees in our roads, one way or another. We've come upon them. Thankfully, hopefully we get past them. We find a way. But as Jeff said, it's about making something human enough that the audience says, oh my God, what if that was me? What would I do? And make it relatable in those ways, as far-fetched as this From Town seems to be, And
I think from the beginning, I've called this sort of a a character drama masquerading as a horror series. And to me, the genre that I've always been most attracted to is genre that sort of becomes a backdrop, because you're examining these very human moments against this unlikely backdrop. It almost makes them more poignant in some ways. Like if you look at episode 2 in season 3, the loss of Tien Chen was very much sort of like a meditation on grief, but a meditation on grief in Fromtown. Like what happens when you're trying to grieve in a nightmare. So as storytellers, it's sort of a love letter to the people that we've lost, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but how do you grieve when you're in the middle of a nightmare? And just having the opportunity to explore stories, very human stories against that kind of backdrop is really, to me, like one of the unique things that working in genre offers.
Now, having said all of that, to round out your question, the things that are really fun for us and that really dimensionalize both the show and sort of our experience on it are being able to say, hey, what if there are a bunch of bottles hanging from the tree? What would that mean? And like having a whole bunch of like, crazy situations, crazy questions. It allows us, our writers, our production people, there are a tremendous amount of massively talented artists on our show, the cameramen, the actors, and everybody gets to bring best idea wins. It's not, none of this is about ego or ownership really. And so it allows everybody to play along and just really dip into their imagination and come up with the craziest stuff and filter it through us. And it's sort of like, oh, that's cool. And what would that be? And we really, like, again, our bread and butter is the human stories, but all of the stuff around that you might not get on a more straightforward show makes it really fun for us. And it's what keeps us interested, I think.
I will say in terms of straightforward shows, when you were saying, Jeff, I don't know what that is. And that's kind of what I said too, in a different way, or I don't know if I've ever done one. There are...
To do 8 is enough.
You had to bring that up. I was an actor. Okay. I wasn't like directing. You guys weren't born yet. Wow, 8 is enough blew my head off. And, no, but I think I was, what the hell was I going to say? It'll come back to me and I'll interrupt you.
Well, I'll vamp for a second while you think about it, Jack. Because what I was also going to say is that, like, one of the great things we've said many times that we've known where the show is going from the very start. The mythology has sort of been the roadmap that has allowed us to go off road and go explore. Like people often ask us, like, do you have everything figured out, or are you making it up as you go along? And I'm not going to get into the whole road trip metaphor that I'm sure most people listening have heard by now, but it's like we know the path, and so that allows us to explore as we go. So the show continues to surprise us, because if it's not surprising us, it's going to feel stale for you guys. But in regards to what Jeff said, we have sort of let in the heads of departments on what the show really is, what's really going on. So nothing is cooler than when, for example, Matt Likely, our brilliant production designer, will sort of come up with something and be like, because he knows, the larger umbrella that we're working under, and he'll be like, oh, hey, what about this? And we're like, oh my God, that's fucking awesome. And then that will sort of like inspire story or vice versa. And so, like, it's got a very spontaneous, organic feel that everybody gets to participate in while taking place in this very sort of like structured, forward momentum, if that makes sense. But it's a lot of fun. Knowing where we're going allows for a lot of like really creative and spontaneous fun, not just for us, but with all the people that are contributing to the show.
There was I once had the pleasure of meeting William Styron, who wrote Sophie's Choice, among other brilliant novels. And he said that he didn't know when he wrote Sophie's Choice, which was autobiographical, whether it was going to be 250 pages or 850. And I think that's the gift of being able to write in this genre for you guys. And that is because you don't know, you can be skiing down the mountain, right? Jeff's a good skier. I can't stand up on skis. But using it as a metaphor, as you're skiing and you decide, oh, I'm going to go into the trees. You know what I mean? Even though I know I'm going to end up down at the bottom of the hill drinking brandy or whatever you're going to drink. So the point is that you get to take these characters when an actor comes, and that was the experience on Lost. You know, when an actor was signed up for 3 episodes and you see something happen, and I'm sure we've had that experience on this show where you go, holy shit, that person isn't going in 3 episodes because it's leading us to X, Y, and Z. And I didn't know we'd get there this soon, or I didn't know we'd get there at all. So it's a really creative thing, I believe. And these days now, not having to do 22 to 24 episodes, or, you know, like it used to be, whether it's 10 or 8, whatever, it allows you guys to write a great novel or a great chapter in a bigger novel that's going to be season 4, and yet know enough about it before you put on your skis, and to be able to take the trip off to the side and discover things.
Yep.
And I will say that the joy of this partnership is it comes, you know, out of weird things. I mean, we've all contributed to that stew. And
Constantly.
and it's great. It's just
And-
great.
My favorite part of that story, Jack, is that you don't ski, but you know you would have brandy at the bottom of the hill if you did.
He looks forward to the brandy part. I get it. It keeps us all really present. You're constantly looking, or you're not looking. You're open and receptive to discovery along the way, which allows you to tell a relatable, conventional story inside of a nutty circumstance.
Oh, you know what? I will say though, in season 1, we had the opposite happen. If you remember, the Cynthia, the wonderful actor that played Trudy, we ended up having to film some extra scenes to fill out one of the episodes, and among them was the scene where she sees Jade outside the bar and come up and says what is still today one of my favorite lines in the show, which is I would have rode you like an alabaster dragon. And we had already killed her. You know, it's like, oh, she's so good. We wish we had filmed things in a different order. So that was the opposite. We fell in love with this actor that we had already killed in one of her first days of shooting. So
although on our show that doesn't stop us from people revisiting.
That is also true. Yeah,
that's true.
Speaking of that, I was going to say that's a really good segue to my next question, which is from my cousin Lizzie, who is 9, who I don't know how she watches this without being terrified, but we'll leave it at that. She thinks that maybe the crows represent people that died in the town. And I know you can't answer whether that's true or not, but can you maybe say, should we be looking at the crows? I mean, do they represent?
No, but when Lizzie has an idea for a TV show, please ask her to pitch it, because she's a little genius. And I'm not
so too.
I'm just saying, just to come up with that metaphor is kind of
that's right. Murder of crows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
So compliments to her.
Well, I'm sure she'll be very excited to hear that.
For real. Also, a little bit of questionable parenting on the part of.
Well, yeah. I think her mom's watching this too, so we're watching this too. Just me, thank you. Wants to know how we can get more from. I assume she means outside of the main story.
I think Lizzie's going to write some stories for her.
Yeah,
fiction.
Keep asking that question loud and in public, and maybe the right ears will hear you.
So, do you think we're going to get more of the ARG? We got just a tiny bit, and then didn't get any more with the whole rendezvous. The rendezvous website, the whatever you call it, alternate reality gaming. I think it stands for. I don't even know what it stands for.
Oh.
It's the rendezvous website that led to the picture and everything. Maybe you guys weren't involved in that.
You mean you mean sort of like where they set up the website in the real world and that's another thing where like our production team loves looking for ways that they can sort of build things out into the world that people can experience, and people can there's no plans currently for more of that. However, there weren't plans originally for any of that, so you never know when more of that might crop up.
All right. Let's go to Robert Saunders. I don't know. Some of these, I don't know if you can answer, but we'll see. He said 12 characters have 11 letters in their name and 21 characters have repeating letters in their name. Until Jim's death, those with repeating letters were dying in alphabetical order. Was that intentional? Thank you so much, Robert.
It is now.
It is now.
Am I being wildly naive? Why do people have dollar figures next to their names?
It just means they donated, and we appreciate it.
Oh.
It helps pay for the channel. All right.
So is there a reason why you're picking the people with the higher donations in order?
They just got
I'm teasing.
No, I was going to say, I just went in order of the chat. This question was from, I think it was Reddit. Monsieur, I don't know how to say it, Oshin None. What is something that the fans should be focused on more that we aren't looking at?
We actually, I'm going to speak just for myself, but I have a feeling the same is true for Jeff and Jack. We tend not to really look at the fan groups or the fan boards. I'm looking forward personally to like when the show is over, going back and seeing what a lot of the speculation was. Obviously, like, you know, I take part in the live tweet, and we all have people send us stuff. And, you know, so in a sort of like, I'm going to say this word incorrectly, but sort of like a tangential way, I think I butchered the pronunciation of that. Like, we are sort of aware of what's hitting and what the fans are paying attention to and what's not, but like, we're not really doing deep dives. So I think that the answer would be just keep watching the show. And this is not an answer to the question, but something I never get tired of saying. Everybody always asks what our favorite theory is. And the answer is just, we love the fact that there are theories. Like, we love the fact that people are excited enough about the show, that they're getting on boards, that they're coming up with these theories, that they're breaking down the number of letters in a character's name to see if there's any meaning to it. I mean, the fact that what we're doing is resonating with people to that level and sort of like building a community around it means everything. I mean, like, that's the ultimate reward for doing something like this. So I guess that's my long way of saying, I don't know. But just keep watching, and I'm glad you're enjoying it.
A similar way of answering the same thing is the fact that, honestly, that people are watching as attentively as they are. Everything is there. Like, we're not trying to play coy with the audience. We're not trying to inject a mystery that nobody could ever figure out. That's not. I think that's a loser's game, because at the end of that, either it's something that's so convoluted people are like, huh? Or else it's as we said earlier, hopefully everything is emotional. It's all filtered through emotions. And the amount of people who can just watch our show for the character journeys, that and while also there's another segment of the audience that's counting letters of names, and that is unbelievably gratifying to all of us who make this show, because there are people who are involved in making of the show, actors, all of it, who aren't interested at all in why are we stuck here. It's just sort of like, you know, what's my experience of this world? And yet there's other people for who, you know, the mystery box elements are that's the meat. We're unbelievably grateful that people are watching our show.
And one of the great things too is that Jack, I've tried to replicate your Ingmar Bergman story about the broken windmill, and I butcher it every time, so I'm not going to try it again. But one of the gratifying things too is that, like, and it's one of the benefits of knowing where we're going, is that everything that we're doing and everything that we're, you know, like I've had a few people say to me, "Oh my God, I went back and rewatched, you know, the first season, and I saw things differently." And that is very much part of the design of the show, is that you'll experience it hopefully one way the first time you're watching it, and then you'll go back and realize, oh, we really were telling you a lot of things along the way. And then sometimes there will be things that are there that fans pick up on that we didn't intend, but very much fit with the direction that we're going. And that's kind of, you know, the idea of like, we're sort of telling this story with intention. And there are certain things that we put in there intentionally. And then there are other things that, like, by happenstance, just sort of like magically happen, but they very much fit the narrative, which is a lot of fun for us when fans pick up on those things.
Let me take one more from the chat and then I'll go back to you guys. All City wants to know, what was the origination or inspiration for the word Ankui and who came up with it?
I want to know why All City isn't donating money to support your site. They should now that I know this. John?
The word,
The word.
I made up the word. It's I would love to say that there's a much deeper meaning behind it. There is certainly a meaning in terms of our show and our mythology, but I like naming things. I like, one of my favorite things that I came up with in the pilot was the Chromonocle. Like I like to name things, and Ankui, I was well, without getting into any further detail, because I realize I might be teetering on the edge of spoilers. But
for what it's worth, the correct spelling of Ankui and the Chromonocle both have 11 letters in them, but I had to count, so I'm not sure if that's purposeful or an accident.
All right, Karen.
Oh, although I will say, funny anecdote, we got contacted by our legal department or our overseas department, and apparently in some country, I'm not sure which, so I'm not gonna say it. But they said they can't say Ankui because in that language it sounds very similar to the word for genitalia, and they can't have children say Ankui on television. I was like, okay,
that falls in the category of a past life experience you've had.
Yeah, maybe. I guess so. Maybe that's really where Ankui came from. But so
Lizzie could handle it, but that entire country full of people could not.
That's right. In one of our countries, the Ankui is actually a different word, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now.
All right, Karen.
I'm gonna take another one from the chat because we have so many fans out there. And Hank says it was a bold move to kill Jim in the finale. Without getting into spoilers, how do you keep the show from getting too hard to watch? Ethan having to mourn his dad, which might sideline Tabitha. And I mean, you've killed the other kids also, and there's a lot that's hard to watch.
I think it's this comes from the writing, but I think a show like this has to pay a price. You have to pay a price for the characters to survive. You have to keep that like a fuse burning. I think the show has to always have a spring that's sprung and could go out at any minute off. And that has to do with life and death. And at times it's hard to look at that. We do try to not glorify anybody's demise. And I will say that the conceit for how Jim was going to die was something that we discussed a lot and needed to be shocking and quick and graphic enough that you knew, in fact, he was going to not survive it. But I don't think we want to do a show that it's more emotionally gruesome than it is physically gruesome, even though there are times Tan Gen's body was horrific. And as John said at the beginning of this, the idea, I decided how I wanted to shoot it, just moving in on Harold slowly with Tan Gen screaming, but it was written in the script by John and Jeff that I think you guys shared that one. No matter what, it was conceived by you guys, that we weren't going to see the mutilation. We were just going to hear it. And my notion was we were only going to play it on Harold's face, the brilliant actor that Harold Perrineau is. And that in the next episode, it was written that when he was walking back from being in the church with the body, which was gruesomely created and authentically, you would swear it was actually her, but it was a model that was made out of her brilliantly by our team of designers. And all I can say to digress for a second was shooting on the set with that body torn apart in the bed. I would walk by occasionally and stop and go, like, I wanted to say I'm sorry to our actress because it was so goddamn authentic looking.
Yep.
But the point being is that it was written that we would only see those flashes as they were horrifically coming back to Boyd, who was trying to hold it together. So once again, it's showing the gruesomeness that is pushing where our lead character, Harold Perrineau, Sheriff Boyd, the teeter-totter he's on and barely trying to hold on as he walks back to the sheriff's station. It's used to propel that rocky emotion, horrific thing he's going through. So I think that kind of answered it.
Yeah.
For me.
I think too that, like, as Jack said, shows like this have to have a cost. And we never take the death of a character lightly. One of the things this show will never be the who's going to die this week show. Like again, in order for a death like that to be justified, it really has to have an emotional justification for the character arc. Like going back to the death of Nathan in season 1 or the death of Father Khatri. Father Khatri was initially going to go out into the woods with Boyd and Sarah. Father Khatri quickly became Boyd's conscience and his sort of his foil, his rock. And so having that ripped away from Boyd, just put him further down the rabbit hole in terms of his journey. And Jim, as difficult as the deaths have been to this point, the death of Tien Chen included, Jim really was a gut punch. And I'm not even talking about the audience. I'm talking about for me. It was the weight of that loss is one that honestly, like I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day. It's like I'm grieving Jim, and not only because of what Ian brilliantly brought to the character and sort of like that rugged everyman quality of a dad in over his head trying to do the best for his family, but also because of the father figure, being ripped away from this family and this family breaking a little bit more. And I think that it's also very important to us that this should never become a show about hopelessness. This is a show about hope, and it's about the struggle towards something better. And sometimes a big part of that is grief. And in life, things are ripped away when we least expect it, and it's who we become after that is sort of the gift that grief gives us. And having the opportunity to reflect that in this show in a number of different ways, and to see the character grieves to see the characters grieve in ways that they wouldn't be afforded in the real world. Like the fact that one of my favorite moments in season 3 was when Boyd is in the shed and Father Khatri is taking him to task for what he's about to do to Elgin. And Boyd says to him, "You were supposed to be here. We were supposed to figure this out together." And you understand that moment, how lost Boyd is without him. So I think, going back to the question, it's like, the goal is never to be like, ooh, let's see how gruesome we can make this. The goal is really to provide our characters with a challenge that they have to rise to, or ultimately crumble before. And that struggle is very human, and that struggle can have grief and it can also have joy. Like for every grieving moment, you can have a moment where Kenny and Boyd are having a catch outside, like a father and son back in the real world. So I hope that sort of serves as an question.
You also have to keep the threat alive, the threat. I mean, it has to have a cost every so often, and otherwise it loses that tension.
Yeah. Thanks, AJ. Give us a good one.
All right, this is a question that we've been wondering for weeks now. I think the first person we asked was, I don't remember who the first actor we asked this question, but what is the time frame? Some people think it's about 3 weeks. Some people think it's about 3 months. How long have we been watching?
I'm going to lead I'm going to leap in and say for all of us, no comment, because everybody has their own sense of time, and however you experience the show is how you experience the show.
Okay,
Good
that
one.
works.
That's a good answer.
So
All right.
everybody's answers have been right.
Yep. Chris Lee TV asks, how particular are you about things that occur in the background? Because many fans have theories about things that are happening in the background or scenes and aren't sure if they're continuity errors. And I know they're probably talking about there's like what they call the teleporting, I don't know if it's a man or a woman, in the real world. And, there's like a house or something that disappears. How important are those kind of things, I guess?
I think that as no matter how hard we work editorially to make sure that there are no continuity errors, the best of us, truthfully, some directors / producers don't care about continuity. Famously, we do care about continuity, but inevitably you're going to miss something. A, B, we're wildly careful about what's going on in every aspect of the frame. Jack can tell you the compositions are important. So
Yeah.
the answer falls somewhere in the middle. How about that?
Well, we haven't left any Starbucks cups. Not yet. I mean,
Never say never.
Or at least haven't had any that we didn't digitize out at the last minute.
Well, yeah, which somehow, having experienced that show, I don't know how that happened, because God knows they had, whatever. But moving on from that.
There was an episode, I don't know if I've ever discussed this with you. I was in the editing room at Lost one time, and in the other's house there was the rack room right on the back of the hotel room door.
Oh, really?
Which we took out. It never made it to air. Point being, like the no matter how hard you try, things slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. This is from Scarlett. What literature inspires you guys, and does that or observations during your own lives, play a bigger inspiration than what you read or watch when it comes to the show?
I think the inspiration comes from everywhere. It comes from music. It comes from literature. It comes from our waking lives. It comes from our sleeping lives. I think as much as possible, again, this isn't just the three of us. This is everybody who works on the show, draws inspiration from everywhere. And to your question about like a straightforward show, again, that's one of the joys of this kind of show, is that you can pull from everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Could I also, I not that anyone's been waiting for this, and I haven't been ruminating about it. I've been very present. But what I was about to say was more real world shows, like doctor shows, and mostly Dick Wolf's oeuvre of shows in various cities. Procedurals, even though they can go into various dark alleys that can be mostly, whether it's Nurse Jackie or whatever, it's screwed up characters and stuff. But I find that I've done my share of those, but I will say that that kind of stuff, as brilliant as they can be, would not be as interesting to me as something like we're making here. For maybe all the reasons you guys have already said and you guys have asked, that we get to live in the box we all live in, and at the same time we get to blow out the box and look at it as a rectangle or look at it as a round sphere. And that's what the genre allows us to do, as opposed to the strictures. And I'll say it again, there are a lot of brilliant shows in that world, and people do great work. But for me, there's no question that this world is much more intriguing to me, personally, as a director and a producer.
I think in terms of, go ahead, Jeff.
I think what I find, again, personally, and I watch what you might call more straightforward shows.
Yeah.
This type of show, I find ultimately more, I invest more. Like I can love those shows. I love this kind of show a little bit deeper. It sparks my imagination as a viewer, not only as a participant or a creator, but it sparks these kind of shows spark my imagination more as a viewer. And I just find it a little bit more sticky. Back in the old days, before there were things like the internet, if you were interested in things that weren't really mainstream, you had to work really hard to find them. You had to go to import record stores. You had to go to card shows or collectible shows. You had to really invest yourself in your passion. Everything now is available to us. You know, standing where we are right now with our fingers, everything is available to us. You can have it shipped to you the next day. So I think that this kind of show starts to recreate some of the experience of being deeply passionate about something.
That's really interestingly said.
And I think in terms of inspirations, you know, for a show like this, it's really important to draw on inspirations that exist outside just of the genre. You know what I mean? Like some of the, like on a personal level, like some of my strongest inspirations, like I grew up as a theater kid, so like, you know, like Tony Kushner and Sam Shepard and Eugene O'Neill, like Long Day's Journey into Night. We're kind of a monologue-y show. You might have noticed, and we try to only have monologues when they're really warranted. Like sometimes Jeff will say, like, I don't know that we really need this monologue, or I'll get a call from Jack the night before he shoots. He's like, there's too many fucking lines in this scene. You know, so but for every one of those, we have that, you know, Donna giving that monologue, which Liz Saunders just did so beautifully in episode 2.
Yeah.
You know, because I think those inspirations, again, like when you can take those inspirations and use the genre as a vehicle for them, I think, you know, every once in a while you get the opportunity to make something that feels a little bit more than. So I think that's, you know, and across the board, we have this wonderfully eclectic rainbow of influences amongst all of us. And I think everybody bringing those to the genre piece that we're making sort of accomplishes or helps to accomplish what Jeff is talking about, where like it just makes it feel hopefully a little bit more than what you'd expect, and a little bit, for me on a personal level, it makes it feel, and I think sort of mirroring what Jeff just said, it makes it feel more real to me. It makes it feel more grounded and more real. And
personal in a way. I mean, when you're dealing with this kind of stuff, images can come into my head, whether it's a dream or about to be a dream or after a dream, whatever it may or may not be, or walking around, that I'll go, oh my God. And then it will find its way into the show because that's the meal we're making. There's room for that. John, I don't know that I can say anything about, let me see, how do I say this? You know that song Yellow by
Coldplay.
Yes.
Coldplay. Can I refer to Yellow, not the song?
Oh, the inspiration, you mean?
Yes.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we yes.
Well,
Ricky already outed us, so yeah, we've.
I love the backdoor way into that question.
Well, the reason the backdoor way came about was because I didn't want to. I don't know. I didn't want to go into.
No. Mind meld. I get it. I was genuine. I love the backdoor way into that question.
So, and if you guys have heard this, stop me, because we're working on the kind of show that, aside from the fact that we all take from our pasts and the pain and the joy we've lived through in our lives, and John and I talk about that a lot at meals we have there when Jeff isn't there, talking about how awful we were at sports as kids and all that stuff. I digress. What I'm going to talk about is John one day is telling us about before he created From, and he was wandering around, I believe, you know, writing other stuff, whatever you were doing. and you saw this homeless guy wearing a yellow, not ragged, but really worn yellow suit.
Well, no, actually, the first time I
Okay.
saw him,
Yes.
I was driving down Los Feliz Boulevard and I passed a fountain on the corner of Los Feliz and Riverside.
Right.
And by this fountain, I saw this man in what was a brand new canary yellow suit. He also had a fedora on, and he was dancing with this incredible joy, this like janky, weird, childlike joy. And I've said it was like watching an angel that was trying out his adult body for the first time, and like to the point where like it took my eyes off the road and watched him as I drove by. End of story. And then, and left enough that I remembered him. About 4, maybe 5 years later, I'm driving through a different part of Hollywood up Cahuenga Pass next to the freeway, and I see the same man in the same yellow suit, only now it's worn and ragged, and he looks so defeated and lost, and it's like he had like between the first time I saw him and now he had gone through this incredible journey or faced some magical foe. I felt like I had wandered into the margins of some magical journey that this character had taken, and I saw the before and I saw the after, and he became sort of like a character for me. Like I wrote a number of stories about the man in the yellow suit, and so I'll hand the baton back to Jack.
Well, you've ruined my story.
Well, I just I'm sorry.
It's your story. It's not my story. What I'm saying is we are doing the kind of show that John can find a place to put that character in that yellow suit, which I knew the minute I heard the story the guy had to wear, and it's here, and it's now people are talking about it. That's great. You might not find that on a doctor show. Yeah, on ER. I guess you might, but nevertheless, the point is that that's the joy of doing a show that's got this kind of canvas where you can splatter paint and not know what it is, and then suddenly go, holy shit, that's that. It's pretty great.
Yeah, a lot of crazy things. Did you guys have a hard out at 4? I don't want to keep you too long if you had to go.
Let's say we can do 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Unless Jack or John, you need to.
No. I'm good for 10.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Breezy Acre. What's it like watching actors bring your characters to life with their own perspective and life experiences? How do their interpretations impact the way you write the characters going forward?
I think it's a pretty amazing thing. One quick story about Ethan and Victor. It was when we were shooting episode 4, and Scott and Simon were running lines for the scene where Scott takes him out of that house while Jim and Tab are there fighting and gives him his walking stick for the first time. And I watched them rehearsing, and there's this tall, lanky man with a lunchbox wearing these old rags, and this little boy with a walking stick, looking it up. And it was one of the first times on set I had this moment where it's like, oh wow, this is really cool. This is really cool to see these people. And also, I've said this to Scott a number of times. Jack and I were on set together during that first scene. The first scene that Scott shot as Victor was him showing Ethan the drawing, and watching Scott drop into that character, and watching, him and Jack have little, sidebars and sort of like that magical moment where you really saw Victor come to life was incredible. And to the point now where, when we write, I can oftentimes hear them speaking, I teared up in the coffee shop when I wrote Victor saying I didn't know how to get home to his father. But then hearing Scott do it just took it so far. Like as good as I imagined him being in my mind, he was just breathtaking in the actual episode. So I could talk about it 100 different ways, but it's a pretty magical experience. And sort of like the goal with a show like this is that at a certain point, you kind of birth the characters, but then the actor playing the character helps you raise them. So like together you're raising the character into the person they become. And so you start to lose sight of like where you end and the actor begins in terms of like the voice when you're writing it. And that's kind of and because we have such a stellar, brilliantly talented cast, there's not a single actor in our bunch that makes that process difficult. They're all a joy to write for.
I think it's a bit of like is it nature or is it nurture question. I think it's always unbelievably thrilling and magical to watch an actor say any words that you've written. It's unbelievably thrilling to watch carpenters build a house that you've typed, and it's a 3-story house, and then it's thrilling. It's unbelievably, it's a gift every time. I think if you're smart and wise, you take what the actor brings to it, and that suddenly, like, the character is imagined and the actor's performance meet in the middle. Jack can speak to this better. There's also direction in the performance. It's always a living thing. It's always organic. It's always changing. It's always growing. Our actors, sort of a little bit, famously in our world, don't know what's going to happen to the character, and they don't want to know, because we want them. They know their backstory if it's relevant. If the character will know it, we know more than they do. A lot of the production crew knows more than the actors do, because we want them to experience it as much in the moment as possible. Obviously, they've read the script, they've prepared all that, and then again, Jack can speak to this better. Sometimes it changes on the stage on the day, and the intention of it changes to degrees, but those degrees are meaningful, and so it's really a living thing. And then, of course, there's different takes, and you choose which take, and it evolves.
I will say also, in terms of directing the actors, for me, it's always been, I'm also a painter. I've been that forever. And I started off as an actor, but I will say that when the actors are living the scenes that you guys have written and I've studied, and they're bringing life to it, it transports me totally. And it's a real gift. It's a real gift to be able to go there, on that magic carpet. And John was an actor. Jeff, thankfully, was never an actor. I'm saying thankfully for you. But not for the audience, but for you.
For the audience, believe me.
But also as my partners in this, they sometimes there are writers who are very locked into everything that was on the page. Not literally a character opens a window, unless they have to open a window, and you'd be insane not to have them open a window. But you guys really appreciate, and it also speaks to how good our actors are. If it's a little different, frequently it's better than it was, or it's different for a reason, or whatever, and you're not locked into exactly what was written on the page, because you appreciate the process of character and acting and all of that stuff. And that's really, it gives the director freedom to help bring it to life with the actors, which is sometimes different than, it's like cooking the meal. You guys have cooked the meal and made a serious recipe, you know what I mean? But then it's, you know what I'm saying?
Sometimes it requires an extra pinch of salt to come alive.
And I think it's important to know what to be precious about. And oftentimes there's a select few things where it's like, oh no, that has to be said that way because of this, But to Jeff's point, it's like it's so much more important that it feels organic for a lot of the times I'll get calls or Jeff will get calls like the night before, like from one of our actors saying like, hey, is it okay if I say like where instead of when, which is awesome of them to do. You know what I mean? Like, and the answer is always yes. And then as Jack said, sometimes the funniest thing is I'll be on set with Jack and, they'll be running a scene and one of the actors say like, well, and Jack says, no, don't say that. And they'll be like, well, but that's in the script. He's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. He'll look at me and say, sorry. And, and having, or there'll be sometimes where the way that we're blocking a scene, this is actually the most fun, is that like sometimes I remember Jack, you'll remember this, the sonogram scene in episode 7.
Yeah.
It was like the way that it needed to be blocked and the number of characters that we were like, it just wasn't working. And so, and we had a very tight window to shoot it. So like that scene was entirely rewritten on the set. Like I put the actors into a room and we just sort of like figured it out right then and there. And that's sort of like the adrenaline and the high of doing that is so much fun. So sometimes the fact that we don't have the luxury of saying like, all right, this scene's not working, let's shoot it tomorrow. Like we can't do that. We need to get it shot that day and it needs to be right. And so that's just like, again, that sort of like organic, spontaneous nature is a lot of fun.
I'll tell a very quick story on this theme, and then we'll take one more question because it'll be my fault we go over. The scene where Julie or some part of her was down in the cavern, and she was screaming on the bed. As Jack called cut, Ethan, Simon Webster, little Simon, was sobbing, terrified at having watched Hannah, the actress, performing as Julie, screaming in bed because it was so real to Simon. And Jack, lovingly, like the father that he is, cleared the set, took a moment with Simon to make sure he was okay. But sometimes the veneer between the actor and the character is so thin. That's when it's really kind of special. When you watch the actors losing themselves to the character in the moment, that's when it's really cool. When it's real for them, and it was real for Simon in that moment. That's when it's really cool.
Let's take one more. This one I think will be pretty quick. What was the inspiration? Real enigmas and theories. What was the inspiration for the deviled egg symbolism during Tian-Ten's death scene and her picture being put on an egg platter? Whose idea was it? I didn't notice that, but
Oh, the egg platter was a memorial that they do, right? It's they make memorials after somebody has died, like that.
It was culturally appropriate.
Yes, yes, and we did that for his Kenny's father too. We made one.
I'm curious what the egg platters did. What is the deviled egg symbol?
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, so the answer is it wasn't intended. If this is one of those happy accidents that that we were referring to earlier, God bless us. If there's a deeper symbolism to a deviled egg, and if that's culturally appropriate, awesome. We're unaware, so somebody can educate us.
I will say that we never have deviled eggs on the set craft service. So this wasn't like a Starbucks cup that appeared on a plate and was photographed as a memorial.
Let's take one more so we don't end on a
deviled egg.
On an ellipses.
Okay. I don't know if you can answer this one, but we'll click this one. Your use of color indicates that main characters arrive in blue and then change into yellow, followed by red, then black. Those in red and black seem to die. Are they injured? Is this intentional? Is that another happy accident, I guess?
Wow. Next question, please, Robert. Awesome question. Next.
No, I'll just say one thing, and that is our designer. No, that's somebody putting together the puzzle in a way that I believe was not designed by me or our designer. It's just somebody making sense out of that. Seems to me.
All right. Karen, did you find a good one? I'm trying to pick one. There's so many. I thought you were.
I have kind of a fun and easy one to end on. I cannot find this comment in the chat.
I know there's so many. I'm trying to
go through it, and I want to answer it. And we can take Robert down if we can.
I know. I'm trying to take it off.
It was Fletch who posed this question. Whose brilliant idea was it to teleport Dale into the pool?
I think that's a collective one that we've all been talking about since early on.
From the time that Victor says you could end up anywhere, to Ethan in season 1, the notion was like at some point somebody's going to go through one of those trees and end up somewhere really, really bad.
Hey guys, I have a question. What's the largest donation anybody's made on behalf of your guys?
I think Robert there.
Super fan.
Yes.
Who was Robert?
So that line of dialogue when Dale says he'll be poolside, Uh,
Yeah, that was
that's
awesome.
intentional, also, huh?
A
little foreshadow there.
We'll plead the fifth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you guys this though. I will say that anybody who donates $100, you guys can forward us their questions and we will respond to them by email.
Holy cow. Wow.
Wow, yeah, wow. But thank you guys so much for coming. And thank you everybody for the great questions. I'm sorry we didn't get through all of them. There's still like a gazillion left in the chat, but we got to what we could. But thank you guys for coming and for spending
Thank
so long.
you.
Thank you guys so much for coming. It's been a
And
pleasure.
yeah.
Listen,
Have a
thank you guys, because you guys and everybody watching, you're the reason that we get to do this, and you're the gas that makes the engine run. So truly, thank you guys.
We're still deep diving a rewatch now, so
Yeah.
to go through them all. It's always fun.
Have a great holiday.
You too, guys.
You too.
Thanks so much.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank
care,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.
Let's get everybody off the stage.
Yeah. I was going to say replace. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, I'm sorry if I did not get to your question. I tried to get to everybody. I saw Julie said she posted a question and then I couldn't find it. That's why I thought maybe you had found it. She said, I think she said she erased it. So I tried to get through, give at least everybody one question, but I know we didn't get there because there was way too many. But thank you guys. And sorry that they had to. Okay. I guess Robert's going to send me a question. I guess you'll have to forward me a question. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, make it a question in 1,000 parts.
Yeah, make it a good one, Rob. I will forward it to his manager. We will see. But yeah, I'm sorry, Julie. I didn't see it. I've been tried to find it, but there's so many things in the question, so many things in the chat. I couldn't find it fast enough when they're like one more question. So I'm sorry about that. But maybe we'll get them back again. We'll have to see. But yeah, they said they had to leave at 7, so we had a lot more time than we were supposed to.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice that John Griffin referred to the town as From Town?
Yeah.
Who did?
Not as Fromville. He called it From Town.
Yeah. What's called? Jack said that too. David, you should just write a novel based on all your theories.
Yeah.
And then publish.
I think 3,000, would that be enough? I don't know. Yeah, we'll definitely try to get him back again. We'll see. But thank you guys. And
At,
we're all
at the end of next season, so we have more questions for them.
Well,
yeah, true. But we're always trying to get more people on the show because we all love From. But we appreciate them.
I want those guys to not do any more interviews after this one and get on their keyboards and write some scripts and get our show back on.
Yes.
No, Jack said he already read everything, and it looked
Right,
good.
and it's already online. It's already been released.
Yeah, I was
that
tempted.
has been debunked.
I was-
So all
I
those
was-
leaks
I
are
was
out now.
I was tempted to ask them, what's it like having the best show on TV and nobody's watching it because it's on MGM?
Oh, don't ask that.
Actually,
I don't know. I still have
I wasn't really going to ask that.
I know. I didn't know it was going to take that long. I still had so many questions like I wanted to ask about.
My
Fandom.
first question, they answered for 20 minutes.
I know.
yeah, they're very generous with their thoughts. Those guys.
Yes, they are.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, everybody in the chat.
Oh, Debbie said movie blog told her about it. Well, I'm glad he did. Thank you to the movie blog then, who isn't on here, but I know at least I didn't see him in the chat. I know he said he was going to be in the comments, but yeah, thank you everybody who watched.
Thanks,
Again, I am sorry I didn't get to everybody because I know some of you didn't even get one question, and I tried. It is hard to go through that chat, and you guys are moving fast. But
Yeah.
But okay,
Right.
well,
Thanks, you guys.
yeah, and I was going to say we should still have the. Let me put the Discord link really quick again in here. And guys, please, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel. And here is the Discord link. Our rewatch with the rewatch party, not watch party, rewatch party is Saturday night and at 8 Eastern, and then Sunday is our deep dive, which is at 10:30 p.m.
And Jamie, you and Robert know how to contact each other?
No, I assume he's on the Discord.
And anybody
I
else?
think he's on the
So,
Discord.
okay.
So yeah, either go to the Discord or you can email me the question. I don't really want to put my email live on the show, but are you on the Discord? That's what I was gonna say. We'll see if he answers.
There's probably
I know Julie knows Robert. Either way, if you're not, Julie can get it to me.
All right, Julie just said she.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But
Okay.
yeah,
I
I will try to send this stuff to him but I will do that for you, Robert. Thank you so
All
much,
right, thanks,
Robert. I
everybody.
do appreciate it. That really helps my site a lot. All of your donations help the site a lot.
But they're not required. We try to
No,
ask.
they're not required. And to get a question, that's why I tried to get through everybody. I didn't know what to say when he said that. I'm like, I'm trying to get everybody make sure everybody gets one. But yeah. Okay.
Well, all right. Thanks.
All right. Have a good night,
All right.
guys. We'll see you on Saturday.
Night, everybody.
Good night. Happy holidays.